Hi. It is Friday afternoon on September 6th. I am Rob, the developer dad, and I'm making a dotNet application that is going to help me and perhaps others when I am running my D&D games. First feature is an NPC generator because I'm always getting asked by my players, hey, what's this shopkeeper's name and what do they look like and all that crazy stuff. And I never have a quick answer for them. I just name them all Bob. And it doesn't really work for a long running campaign because they'll keep running into Bob and then they'll run into another Bob and another Bob and another Bob. And it's kind of silly. So I wanted to build something that makes it a little bit easier for me to come up with that stuff on the fly as needed. So I did it, and I've shown it to a few people, and they're like, "Ooh, I want it." So now I'm taking that concept and turning it into an actual application that could exist as something you could subscribe to. And so in order to do that, I need to be able to I need to be able to keep track of who's using how much stuff so that I don't end up with somebody costing me $100 when they're only paying me $10 a month. So this morning we spent some time figuring out what the storage is going to look like and the different activities that are going to write to that storage stuff. So increment quota usage, load user quota, release quota usage for storage quotas only. And yeah, so we kind of have a vision of what this stuff is going to look like now. So let's dive into the code. Here is the code. We've got metered usage access. I've got this stuff, and I'm not in love with the name of this interface. So we're going to rename it right now to quota access. Okay. We're going to add another interface. Add new item. And it's going to be an interface, and it is going to be user subscription access. And we're going to add that. And we're going to make it public. All right. So we're going to have a task that has an op result. And it's going to be called save subscription. And we're not quite sure what's going in there yet. Task, op result, load subscription. We're not quite sure what's going in there. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to start subscription, load subscription, task, op result, renew subscription. And another task, op result cancel subscription. And finally, task no, because halt subscription is just a variation of cancel subscription. I need to bring in my framework class. Invoked when a new subscription is created for a user. Creates a record for the subscription that records, that holds kind, period information, start end dates, and whether it has been discontinued. Retrieves the subscription data for a particular user. Updates the subscription row for the identified user by extending the period end. No. By writing a new subscription row with new no. Updates the subscription row for the identified user. Adds the period time to the period end field. Also updates any quotas. I'm really not in love with this concept. Also updates any quotas that need to be refreshed when the subscription period flips to a new one. Sets the unsubscribed date on the user's subscription record to the date that the cancel request arrived. If the cancel now flag is passed as true, the period end for that user's subscription is moved to that same timestamp. Retrieves the subscription data for a particular user. This data will also include a report of their resource quotas with the current consumption amounts listed. Excuse me. Goodness. All right, so that's iUser subscription access. Let's come back to quota access. And we don't need to worry about create new user quota async. That can go away. Load user quota async. We might want that. Yeah, we'll keep it. Consume quota, we're going to keep that. Release, yes. And we're going to get rid of this admin update quota. Now, I did notice something on this interface. Consume quota async, release quota async. All right. And because I'm a nice guy, op result, user quota, load user quota, op result, user quota, consume quota, and op result, user quota, release quota. All right. Now, I thought I saw something pop up as I was typing these things. And I remember hearing that we can have default implementations on an interface. Quota async dot result. And that is a really nice little affordance. I wonder if it'll actually work for us. Async. I got to use the right symbols here. Dot result. All right. Release quota async dot result. Build solution. Okay. So for load user quota, we need string user ID. We're going to have to pass that in here. to unbreak this call, we just pop it in here, like so. I really like this chaining pattern that I have here. I didn't invent it. Consume quota is a is going to have a ID of that quota. We're going to use an int. Oops. It's going to take an int quota ID, int amount consumed. We're going to need those parameters up here in consume quota. And then we got to pass them on to quota ID amount consumed. And we got to spell our variables right. Okay. We're probably going to revisit this, but that's all right. Release quota, int quota ID, int amount released. And we got to pass quota ID and amount released. Amount, spell it right. We got to grab this. Control C, Control V. Now, what does this do? We need to monitor and limit the usage by our subscribers of these resources. iQuota access provides the methods by which the main application will manage a user's quotas during the execution of user-initiated requests. Returns a task containing the user's quota object. Okay, and I want to grab this, a task containing there we go. Excuse me. So iQuota access, very good. Now over here, this component describes the user subscription and quota access tasks that are invoked by subscription management. A subscription management component. All right. Result. add class called user subscription, and we're going to make it public. It is going to have an ID, public string user ID, public date time, start date, public date time, end date, get set, and public bool will renew, get set. On the user subscription, we're also going to have that user's quota. Public user quota get set, bam, save. And we're going to do this instead of being a class. Let's leave it as a class for now. Sutor, and I need to set user ID equal to string.empty. And it's unlikely that we're ever going to pass this whole object up to be just written to the database as is. Quota equals new user quota. Save. Now, the user quota, definition, as a resource quota, go to definition, metered resource, budget consumption, okay. And public string resource name, get set, okay. Identifies the general kind of resource that has this quota, i.e. storage or AI tokens. Provides the specific name of the resource that is quoted. That has the quota, i.e. NPC storage, NPC generation. NPC AI generation. Describes the amount of the specific resource that the user can consume. Describes the amount of the specific resource that the user has consumed. Is there anything else I need to worry about here? I don't think so. Resource name equals string dot empty. Now, on user quotas, we've got quota template ID. Resource kind is periodic units granted, created date, updated date, deleted date. Okay. There is one more property on quota templates that I need to account for. And that is resource name. Is that what I call it over here? Yep, it is. Resource name. And I gotta make this slightly bigger. Here we go. All right. So we've got that. Resource quota is about set. Quota templates, not relevant to the public-facing part of the application. Not yet. Meter resource, resource name, budget consumption. I think that's all we really care about. So when we create our user quota, I need to go resource kind, metered resource equals metered resource kind NPC storage, metered, resource name equals saved NPCs. Metered resource equals metered resource kind dot NPC AI detail I think I spelled that wrong and I'm just not seeing it. Resource quota. Copy this, paste it in here. What are you even grumping about? That's very silly. Something goofy's happening. Nope, that's not it. New resource quota. Let's try resource name. Metered resource equals Metered resource kind dot AI detail. Metered, no. I don't need that resource name at all because the metered resource kinds are entity specific. That's right. I made that decision yesterday. So I can come over to resource quota and change resource name to metered resource dot, is it toString? I think I've got I believe it's just toString. I can get rid of this. There we go. Okay. Save that. Close, close, close. Op result can go bye-bye. So, user subscription access. We're going to need information about the user as they're starting their subscription. So we're going to need string user ID and we're only likely to have one subscription kind for now, and it's going to be basically 30-day recurring. It's going to return an op result of user subscription. What's that complaining about? Yeah, there we go. So we're just going to start the subscription for the user ID, and it's going to be right now to 30 days from now. Load subscription. Obviously, all we need, string user ID. And it too needs to return a user subscription. There we go. Renew subscription will also return the updated subscription. And string user ID. Yeah. I think that's all we need to pass in. And finally, user ID. And we'll return the user subscription. Control C, Control V, bool, cancel immediately equals false. There we go. So if it's a cancel with refund issued, or we get notification that a refund was issued, bonk, off it goes. All of this is likely going to need to change as I learn more about the API and the workflows that the payment processor that I choose implements, and how those workflows work and everything like that. And my Explorer says I has an error. Let's find it. Start subscription. Don't need that. You know what? String. String? Yeah, string. Subscription kind. But we're going to make this a nullable string and default it to null. Because that is likely, well, it's possible that that can change, like very possible, perhaps even probable. So there we go. There is our collection of interfaces. So we've got user subscription access, iQuota access, all this stuff. All right. So now I need to implement this. So let's go add a new project, and it's going to be a class library, and it's going to be called game tools dot metered usage access dot SQL server. Yeah, there we go. And it's going to live in the resource access folder. Select the folder, hit next, create. We are definitely going to need a project reference to metered usage access. We're gonna need a reference to DevDad framework. We're probably gonna need a reference to Game Tools framework. And that's really it as far as the other projects are concerned. So let's click OK. Pardon me. We are definitely going to need some NuGets. And we are going to need EntityFramework Core SqlServer. And we can install that. Yeah, I'm on here. Hit me up after. I will be all ears in about 20 minutes. All right. So we've got EntityFramework Core SqlServer. That is good. And, oh, excuse me. I think that's about all I need to do there as far as project references and stuff go. Let me double check and make sure I pulled in the correct packages. I'm likely going to need Azure Identity. I've got Framework Core SqlServer, system formats ASN1. I don't even know what that is. What the deuce? Dependencies, packages. Here's that. Azure.microsoft.identity even used? Or Azure Identity? I'd love to know what's there. And what ASN1 is. Azure Core, Identity Client, yeah. MSOL stuff. Scope, could not. Got connection string, user data. We're going to recycle that connection string because it's going to the same place for now. All right, so up here in metered usage access, and I need to change the name of this project. This is going to be ugly. Rename. Metered usage access. I don't believe it's referenced anywhere yet, so I caught it in time. It's brand new. But I am going to have to come down to the folder in the File Explorer, go up a level, and change its name here. Otherwise, when I go to run things like builds and stuff up in the cloud, everything's going to lose its bloody mind if I don't have that cased correctly in the repository. All right. Here's all this stuff. Class 1. And we're going to need to add a folder. And it's going to be called Storage Models. Storage. There. Now, I want to make sure I'm doing this roughly parallel. Context. Okay, yeah. Rename. Context. Inside context goes SQL models. Cool. And I'm going to add a class called user quota. No, I'm just going to call it the usage context. Usage DB context, right? Yep. Usage access DB context. Add. We're going to leave it internal. Our SQL models, I'm not going to do yet. However, I am going to go DB context. It's going to give me little red angry little wiggles. I'm going to pop this guy open and make sure I'm configuring things correctly. I don't carry this stuff in random access memory very often, in like my personal random access memory. So I don't often remember all of these little detail-y things here. So I crib from myself all the time. Read-only string underscore CN. Constructor string CN. Doing anything special over here? Yep, we are. We're chaining to the base constructor. And then inside here, cn equals cn. Save. How about save, you fool? Now, on configuring, I got to tell it to use SQL Server. Protected override base. Wait, override void on configuring. On configuring. Based on configuring options builder. Options builder dot use SQL server underscore cn. Boop. Oh, excuse me. And we're not going to add any DB sets yet because we don't have any database tables to turn into the entities that we'll expose through our context. We will get to those, I promise. Maybe not today. So, quota access SQL provider, I quota access, and we need to add the reference, and we need to implement the interface. Boom. Implements I quota access against SQL Server using EntityFramework Core. And private read-only string cn constructor pardon me, string cn equals cn. Now, there is a extension method that we can use on our DB contexts and our link queries into databases to make them as read-only. And it really cuts down on internal memory consumption. I might make that a tech debt thing to look into very, very soon and bring in so that I can start using it. Quota access SQL provider. There we go. And while we're at it, let's stub out our subscription access SQL provider. And it's going to be subscription access, user subscription access SQL provider. SQL provider. Boop. Make this guy public. He's going to implement iUser subscription access. We're going to implement it. And it's going to need private read-only string cn string cn cn equals cn. And I'm reasonably sure that I am not declaring, well, I am using a DB context, but I'm doing it, okay, yeah, I'm using lazy instantiation. Okay, and I want to do that here too. But I haven't got a DB context for the user subscription stuff yet. So, well, first off, usage access DB context. Do I want to split this up into quota and subscription? That's the question I'm asking myself right now. Let me think. No. I might internally break it up with the use of regions, just so that I can identify the tables that need to go here and the tables that need to go here if I want to split it up later. But I think for now, we're just going to put everything into one DB context, or at least everything that has to do with the subscriptions and quotas. So I do want to, I'm going to zap that and get rid of these two interfaces because I'm not going to be working in them. But I do want to bring this guy back up. Why didn't you just double click it, Rob? You silly goose. All right, so we've got a read-only string. We're going to need a logger, and we're going to need that DB context. Okay. So let's do the quota access first. Logger, escape, private, read-only, logger of quota access. We're going to make it nullable, logger. And I want to make this stop complaining. We'll just bring that in. And private usage access, DB context. No, you goose. Usage access, DB context. Nullable. CTX. We got to make this guy disposable as well. And we're going to implement the interface with the dispose pattern. And before I go any further on adding any more stuff here, I want to make sure I do this now so that I don't forget. And all I got to do is come in here and go CTX dot dispose. There we go. I don't have any unmanaged objects or large thingies. I can get rid of this green code. This code to free unmanaged. Yeah, I'm not using any unmanaged resources. So I can get rid of that, and I'm going to leave that alone. go. Cool. Now I'm going to do that exact same thing over here. And I'm going to pop out to the end, disposable, implement with the dispose pattern. Good stuff. Private, read-only, logger of user subscription access SQL provider nullable logger. And we've got some Angular code here. So we'll bring in extensions.logging, and I need a private user usage access usage access db context underscore ctx. This will be nullable. I need to remember to inject my loggers here too. But I'm going to come down to the bottom. And inside my disposing, I'm going to say CTX, as long as it ain't null, dispose it. Get rid of these to-dos because I'm not going to to-do them, because I don't need to do them. Save all this. Run back up to the top. I'm not going to remove and sort users yet. The last thing I'm going to do this afternoon is set up private usage access db context ctx get I'm going to grab this, copy it into my quota access just below my constructor. Excuse me. And I want to refer back to what I'm doing over here. Let's take a peek. I'm pretty sure it's just CTX equals CTX. If it's nullable, we'll instantiate it and return it. All right. So, underscore CTX equals CTX. But if it's null, new usage access db context connection string return CTX. Paste it back. Paste this in here. But Rob, you may be saying to yourself, why are you repeating this code between these two access providers? Why don't you put the two access, implement both of them on the same class, or create a stub class that implements or that inherits those other two interfaces, or create a base class? And it's because I have a pretty strong sneaking suspicion that I am not going to be using the same DB access or the same DB context for both of these components for very long. I sense the possibility that there's going to be some volatility here, but I'm not 100% certain that it's there yet, so I don't want to add complexity for volatility that I don't know exists. So for now, we're just going to have the same concept, the same code implemented in two different classes, because my spidey sense is telling me that we're gonna have divergence, or that one or the other of these two contexts or access classes is going to migrate out into its own service at some point, and at some point relatively soon in the grand scheme of things, like probably not before release. But this is one of those things that the subscription stuff might have to be pulled out into a discrete service shortly after we launch to the public. So that's why I'm kind of developing them next to each other, but discreetly from each other. Cancel subscription, load subscription. Last thing I want to do today before we call it a day. And because these things are both going to get a little tiny bit lengthy in their constructor parameters, logger of quota access squill provider logger. There we go. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Give us a little space to play with. Logger of user subscription access SQL provider. Make it nullable. Logger. I don't think I made it nullable over in the other class. But I'm just going to go logger equals logger. Boop. I didn't make it nullable over here, and I should, because I can't always rely that the containing systems are going to give me a logger. Sometimes it might just come up as null. So logger equals logger. I put these in the wrong order. Man, I've got my head in my butt. Just about to. Because I want to make the logger an optional parameter on this list. There we go. I like that. Stop. All right. And I got to do the same thing over here. So string, we're going to cut that from there. Back that up by 1 so that we still have alignment. Tab that in. Get rid of this, make it nullable. And that makes it into an optional parameter. There we go. On Monday, we're going to stand up the dependency builders for these. We're going to create the database table, the schema and tables, and we're going to start tying all of this stuff together. There's one more table and one more concept that I haven't talked about yet, mostly because I have only been kind of peripherally remembering it. And that is a way for me to record the actual count of prompt and completion tokens that's coming back from the AI provider. Because I do want to log that just so that I've got some data to run some metrics with and so on and so forth, and make sure that the quota sizes that I design are fair to both me as the owner of the system and B, my eventual customers. So I'm going to use that token consumption data coming back from semantic kernel, which pulls it back, and it's from the API call over to the Azure OpenAI service to help me determine exactly how much quota I can or how I should design these quota sizes in terms of easy to understand things. I'm not going to use actual AI tokens as the quota amount. I want to say like an NPC generation token, because that's a whole lot easier for a user to understand than, okay, well, the prompt used this many AI tokens and the response used this many AI tokens. And the prompt tokens are way cheaper than the response tokens. And so you get this many prompt tokens and you get that many response tokens. And no, because if I were a customer and I saw that, I'd turn around and walk away. I would say, okay, yeah, this guy, he doesn't know how to take care of human beings. He only knows how to take care of propeller head nerds like himself. Propeller head nerd. So I want to have something a little bit more human, a little bit more reasonable, more real world. But in order to be able to design those real world amounts, I need to understand exactly how much of these resources are being consumed for these different use cases. And we're going to start discovering some of that next week as we start collecting and metering all of this stuff. And then, like, while I develop between now and the founders cohort, if I decide to go that route, I'll have a pretty good idea of what it's going to cost to generate and then save an NPC. So have a great weekend. My wife comes back from a road trip late tonight. We might be playing D&D tomorrow afternoon. I don't know yet. But we're going to have a birthday weekend. Whee! And because hers is today, mine is coming up early next week. And I hope you all have a happy, safe, fun weekend. Be good to yourselves. Be safe out there, and happy coding.